20 miles an hour to around this trailer and go. Ah, that's insane. That's what sport mode will do. Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. We are actually heading into Tortilla Flat, which is a common go-to for me here on the channel in testing these motorcycles. This again is a 2021 electric Livewire One. We have 66 miles to go, which this is not the Livewire charger. I bought a separate charger for the garage here. I don't actually own an EV, but assuming there'll be more on the channel, thought it was worth picking up. That is an Amazon purchase. I'll link down below. Seems to work. I did put the OEM charger back on the bike. What I found was, as a daily commuter, I was leaving this plugged in the garage because I didn't need it. The battery has plenty of power to get me back and forth to the office until you have to add a random stop in there somewhere. And I found really quickly that charger there basically is your gas can. Pretty important to keep that on the bike. And right now we have 66 miles for our trip today. We have 97 miles of range. I have a funny feeling that we will be closer to zero by the time we get home if we don't have to stop and charge. And going into Tortilla Flat, there really is not a significant or any chargers that I could tell. If we run into range issues, it could get sketchy. But the whole goal of this video is, I believe that you can take this thing out on a nice Saturday ride that most people would do. I say most people because a lot of people have this whole thing of, you know, you can't take the Livewire on long trips. Not everybody's going on long trips. A lot of people live busy lives like I do, where I'm lucky to get out on a Saturday and ride for an hour just to have a little bit of throttle therapy, and I think this bike fits that bill. But let's see what we have for range when we get back. We'll kind of cover that when we get back in the garage. So let's hit the road, see how she does. So this is the road coming into Tortilla Flat. This is just the beginning of getting into more of the fun stuff. This is certainly where the scenic stuff starts. But this range now, I'm at 70 miles. So we'll try to leave the range anxiety part of this for the end. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't something that was kind of always in the back of your mind when you're riding something like this. But so you guys can see, I'm really not riding this thing for range. I just dumbed it down so that it only gives me a certain amount of power, so that by default I'm only getting you know, a little bit less, so that while I'm still riding relatively spirited, the bike isn't giving me 100% of power. It's just not letting me zap the battery, which is preferable for me. So if you think that reducing the power reduces the fun, it absolutely does not. It kind of, I would say the fun is still just as much, and the safety factor is drastically increased. I'm not coming out here to like rip around and drag knees, because I'm not that rider. I think that it's pretty common, I think, for like the normal Harley guys to understand that, but I do think any potential sport bike guys would be like, oh, you're barely even giving that bike anything. And truth be told, I'm not super interested in flying off the edge of this mountain. It's not really how I plan on spending my Saturday. What I will say with this bike that's interesting is that when you have a regular combustion engine with just a typical transmission, it's kind of easier to like keep it in second or third, and you're limited by your RPM carrying into these corners. But with this bike, you can basically just stay on the throttle. You never have to shift gears, so you can actually find yourself where you're normally kind of limited by which gear you're in. This is just a totally different experience where I'm not shifting gears, so I can find myself getting up to a faster speed almost unknowingly, I guess you'd say. So it's something you have to definitely pay attention to, is how you carry speed into corners with this thing. But with that being said, the brakes are super good on this thing. I have no issues with braking power even if I carry speed slightly faster than anticipated, braking into a corner is no problem at all. But coming around these corners like this, 25 miles an hour, kind of a blind corner, I will over slow down, especially on this motorcycle, just because I'm not having that comfort level of knowing which gear I'm in. But again, I don't care. I'm not out here trying to drag knees. I'm just out here trying to have fun. And I think that's the classification of a lot of motorcycle riders. But when you can see through the corner, it's a lot easier to, I guess, confidently hit the throttle on this thing and carry a little more speed through that corner. It's just the blind corners out here can be sketchy kind of quickly. But on the Livewire, I think that, you know, where I might be more apt with other vehicles to pull off and let these guys get ahead, which I might still do a time or two here. There's a part of me that's like, well, okay, for the range, let's just kind of stick with the flow of traffic and not push the bike too hard, because the whole point of this video is if you were to buy a Livewire, just knowing what it is capable of, and more importantly, what it's not capable of. So when I see the comments from people who are like, oh, that's such a stupid motorcycle, you could never even do long distance, I've never seen them market it as a long distance touring bike. It's just an electric motorcycle, and with that comes limitations, and those limitations are mileage. But it doesn't limit your ability to come out here on a weekend and do a nice little 60, 70 mile trip, get back home by lunchtime, and be with the family. It's no different than what that guy is doing right now. I can almost assure you he's not ripping around Tortilla flat and then going pounding out 6 hours. He's probably going right back home. Most people, most of the time, are just commuting back and forth to the office, and this bike is able to do all of those things perfectly fine, and matter of fact, incredibly fun. Another interesting thing with this motorcycle, now that I'm actually out here riding it more leisurely, because the couple 100 miles or 300 miles I put on it so far, mostly commuting, has been at 80 miles an hour on the highway, and I've mentioned that you get this nice peaceful breeze over the helmet. And when you're doing that, you really can't hear the whine of this electric motor. But when you're out here on these little side roads or back roads, you actually get this nice satisfying whirring sound from this motor. And it's not bad. I actually kind of think it's interesting. I like it. It has a very satisfying sound to it. It's just not your typical potato Harley, but you know, also not the high whining sport bike. But there's something to be said about this because it's incredibly tranquil. So one thing is with this Livewire, it's a very much like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde experience, where if you put this thing in sport mode, it wants to just throw you off the back of the bike. It's so ridiculous in terms of power that if you're not worried about range and you're just doing a quick rip back and forth to work, you can do it and this thing will want to tear your face off the entire time. And then you can also dumb it down and have it be one of the most tranquil experiences I've ever experienced on two wheels, because it is quiet. If I wasn't out here yammering into my helmet for YouTube videos, this would be an incredibly peaceful experience. Now we have a bunch of open road ahead of us because those people were pretty much pace carring our way through here. So I should have pretty good open road here. And now here we are dropping into Tortilla Flat. It's just a little old mining town, which is now basically a spot that people just ride into. And I have 58 miles of range left. I actually did really, really good on that range coming down there being stuck in traffic. Little Grom Squad. Dope. It's actually really pretty mellow down here right now. What is it? It's only 10:15, and it is Mother's Day weekend, so happy Mother's Day out there to the, I think, 6% female audience that I have. So shout out to the women that watch the channel, which I'm always surprised by that number. But with that being said, this is Tortilla Flat. Honestly, I'm not going to go do a bunch of walking around here because it is kind of tourist trappy. It's a restaurant, saloon, gift shop, and there's a post office here, which is interesting. But to sum up Tortilla Flat pretty quickly, aside from going into the saloon here and having a couple beers, which I'm not going to do today, aside from that, you know, if there's an event down here, I think it'd be cool to come down to. If you're interested in a nice scenic ride, it's really cool to come down to, but for the most part, it's just super expensive gift shop stuff if you're planning on coming down here for anything else. Get ahead of those bikes. I am more interested in coming out here and getting a little open pavement ahead of me to ride out and kind of share my final thoughts on this bike as kind of a weekend warrior type of motorcycle, which I think it has a very compelling argument for as well. We'll see when we get back home with range. 58 miles here, which should be more than plenty because, like I said, the entire round trip was only 66 miles. So see how we do with mileage on the way out. Let's have some fun. This one tightens up a ton. If you carry too much speed in this, you're off right there. So something to be aware of. So that is pretty much the extent of Tortilla Flat. Now we get into kind of the way out here, which is much more open, I guess, visible twisties, much more easier riding out this way. So obviously this motorcycle is incredibly capable of spirited riding. I mean, no doubt. This thing is a beautifully engineered motorcycle. Center of gravity is really down low. It's just a very confidence-inspiring bike to rip around. The rest of this ride is going to be highway out. I am going to now cut back to the garage, and that's going to be seeing what I have left for range. Right now, 47 miles. I probably have about 20 miles or so to home, and the rest of this ride is going to be the incredibly inefficient. I think dumbing this thing down to less than eco mode and trying to find the perfect amount of power that you're comfortable with and being able to just really tune this thing in to that specific spot is perfect. Because if your average rider goes out there into an area like Tortilla Flat and thinks they're going to hit those twisties in sport mode, you better have a good will written out, because this bike has a stupid amount of power and can send you rocketing over the edge of a cliff pretty quickly. So just because it has sport mode does not mean you should be riding in sport mode. Matter of fact, I would argue that for your average person like myself, that sport mode should be reserved to more or less banging off red light to red light and open highway areas where you're not worried about range because it's going to crush the range, but you want to be able to just experience what this bike is capable of at its fullest. Do that more on the open highway, not in the twisties, because being that the power is so linear and you're not shifting through gears, the gears do an awful lot of helping keep you honest, that when I let off I have a certain amount of engine braking, and it just keeps you, second gear, third gear is going to keep you in a certain speed range. But when you don't have the gears, your speed range is unlimited, and that can become dangerous, mainly because
in that little experience that I had there, what I noticed was having unlimited throttle with no gears puts you into a scenario where you can find yourself accidentally carrying too much speed. Like right there, I mean, I would have had to shift gears a couple times there. Either downshift or upshift depending on what range I was in with that car going off to the side there. But with this, you're always able to just add a boatload more speed. And it's incredibly fun. I'm not gonna lie, I love every second of it. So I'm gonna swap this over to sport mode. Oh, yeah, we'll still stay sport mode. I don't know what this guy's doing. Yeah, to get around this trailer. You'll see here, 20 miles an hour to around this trailer and go. Ah, that's insane. That's what sport mode will do. So here we are pulling into the garage with 14 miles of range. We did it.